This is the Varsity Link Coaches Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Varsity Link Coaches Corner here on the Shore Sports Network. Each and every week, talking Shore Conference football, bringing in guests from around the Shore, getting inside their program, highlighting some of the top games of the upcoming week, recapping the past week, and everything else in between. Bob Badders here with Scott Stump in studio this week. A little bit of a new look we're excited about. You'll probably see us bouncing around different locations throughout the fall, but the same every week will be us bringing some Shore Conference football knowledge your way. And some exciting stuff to talk about this week. An eventful week one. We had 15 teams make their season debut, along with the other action. And, you know, we'll get to it later on, but, you know, those first 2 weeks, kind of a little bit of an appetizer. We get into division play heavily this week, and a lot of huge games coming up. So it should be a good one. As we talked about, Scott Stump joining us here, and excited to have Scott on with us every week. And like I was saying, Scott, you know, that week one, you know, it picked up right where week 0 left off, and we had some pretty exciting games and some interesting results.
Yeah, I thought the game you were at, not only was it exciting, we also had ourselves a little controversy to start the Shore Conference season, get it really kicked into gear. Jackson Memorial pulls out a 20-13 overtime win over Manalapan. You had the video. The video everybody was watching right there at the goal line. I mean, I just tell everybody about the play and, you know, what your thought was on it.
Yeah, it was not like hitting the ground running in this week's show, but yes, Manalapan and Jackson, which it's like a burgeoning rivalry. It's not really a rivalry in the sense they play every year, but they play a lot. They play often. And they play in big games, and it always seems to produce wild results. And that was the lead of my story. But like this one might be the craziest one. It ended with a 20-13 overtime victory for the number 7 Jaguars over the number 9 Braves. And it came after Jackson had scored on its overtime possession. Frank Castellano, 29-yard touchdown reception from Dennis Caswell. Manalapan gets the ball. They're right inside Jackson's 5-yard line within one play. And then the play that ended it all, a controversial fumble at the goal line. Ryan Jagodzinski from Jackson came from his spot at cornerback, punched it out. Ethan Kalinauskas recovered it. Manalapan signaling touchdown. Jackson signaling no. It's our ball the other way. The refs got together. It was one of those, it felt like, 10 minutes waiting for it to be decided.
Well, it also felt like one of those NFL college plays,
Yes.
Sticking the ball over the plane, and obviously they're allowed to slow it down to the nth degree to see whether, but in the high school game, you can't do that. So it was just purely a judgment call. And obviously one side's not going to be happy and one side's going to be euphoric when that happens.
And that was Jackson on the euphoric side and Manalapan on the pretty bum side. It was a great game, especially in the fourth quarter and overtime. It's just a tough way for it to end when it's so close like that. You can look at angles and say, oh, he was totally in. You can look at other angles and say, I don't know. It was tough because, especially for me, a lot of people I know had seen, my video from the side. I'm not right on the goal line because I can't be because the official is going to go right there and block my view. So I'm a couple yards in, probably about the 3-yard line. So from that angle, my initial thought was I thought it was a touchdown, but that was not the call.
That'll just be debated until the end of time at this point. I mean, in almost a way, you hope maybe they meet again in the playoffs. They did play last year in the playoffs. So, maybe get that rematch. We can get a definitive answer one way or another. But I thought 2 other things real quick that jumped out of me that game. We know the lineage of Jackson Memorial running backs. They've forever now, like 20-plus years, more, they've had seemingly one great back after another. I think you saw a glimpse at the next one.
Yes, Jonah Glenn, sophomore for Jackson, had a big day in week 1, 156 yards rushing and a touchdown, and he really got their offense going. It was a pretty sleepy first half, 0-0, all defense. Neither team could get anything going. Manalapan goes right down the field, scores their first drive of the third quarter, and Jackson really needed something going. First play hits a 40-yard run. Jackson's in the end zone about 4 or 5 plays later, and then that's where the game really picked up, and he had a big game. They were really impressed with him actually last season. They played Millville in the playoffs.
Yeah, Coach
and
Mistretta was telling me that
game, and they were like, all right, like this kid can play. So they're really high on him. It's a program, as you mentioned, that has produced countless, of the Shore's best rushers, all Shore guys. They had 1,000-yard backs for, over a decade.
And their all-time leading rusher is coaching him.
Yes, Mike Golick. So he's on staff, and their head coach, Vin Mistretta, said as much after the game, kind of serving as a mentor to him. So they're they're really excited. That's a program who they know what a great back is because they have plenty, and they're not going to tell you something that is not true. And they were like, yeah, we're
and
we're
coming
really
up from the
excited
youth
about it.
ranks, from everything I heard, AYF and all that stuff, he and Najee Calhoun from Donovan Catholic were kind of like the two great backs of their class. And now, we saw what Calhoun could already do last year as a freshman. He's back and starring again. Now, Jonah gets his shot, so he's right there. That could be two just superstar running backs we have for the next 2 years putting on a show for us. And the one other unfortunate note, Samir Lee, their senior defensive end, who was having a great game in that game, had 2 sacks. Coach Vin Mistretta told me yesterday most likely tore his ACL and is out for the season in that game, which is just terrible news.
It's terrible news on twofold. First, for Samir, you don't want to ever see a season-ending injury, and the fact that he's a senior makes it an even tougher blow. But in terms of the X's and O's, he was one of their best defensive linemen. He really came on last year. Their coach staff was saying it, and it was unblockable in some games. So that's a major defensive piece. You're missing now. Jackson is fortunate; they have a lot of depth. They returned almost their entire starting lineup on defense last year. So they're losing from a position of strength, but still, that's a guy that they were counting on to be there in the biggest game. So.
And from one thriller to the next, you were just getting all the good games, just hogging them all to yourself last week, because we had the 3 days of games. Because don't forget, it was Thursday, Friday, and Saturday last week. So then you went from that one to the next night. You're at your alma mater, Brick Memorial. And it's funny, we made such a big deal going into that game of get more lights for the scoreboard. It's going to be 52 to 50 and blah, blah. And it was actually the defenses that stepped up in that game.
And that's really what stood out. The defenses for both teams. First, Middletown North did a really good job on Connor Dietz, who, had over, just about 400 yards of offense by himself in week 0. And he's done that for the last 2 years. So you almost expect it. You're like, all right, he's going to get his, 300 plus. And you just hope he doesn't burn you too much. They did a good job on him. He only threw for about 15 yards. They kind of stifled Brickmore's passing game right from the beginning. And they held him to 160-something yards rushing. He did make some big plays at the end, but they did a nice job overall. On the flip side, Brick Memorial was able to come back from a 10-point deficit to win 21-17 because of their defense. They only allowed 7 points in the second half. They really stopped Middletown North's rushing game outside of the first drive when the Lions went all the way down and scored. Right. And to me, that was really impressive because what were we talking about Brick Memorial? They're going to score points. Can they stop anybody? And that's now 2 weeks in a row. Because Allentown scored 25 on them, but it was all in the first half. So they pitched the second half shutout and then had a very similar game to close out a dangerous team that we saw in week 0 put up 45 points.
Exactly. And I also thought head coach Walt Curry's trust in Dietz is so absolute. They have the ball at the end of the first half. They could have settled for a field goal literally in the last 10 seconds, right? And they went for it and scored.
Yeah, they had 4th and goal at the 1 yard line, and they were going to go for it. And you're saying, okay, this makes sense. They're down 10-0. You're getting the ball. To start the third quarter. This is a chance to really set yourself up. Then they get a false start penalty, and all of a sudden it's at the 6. So that changes things a lot. We're wondering what are they going to do. The offense goes back out. And it's a pass play, and Dietz, it wasn't there. He had to scramble, dove for the end zone, and got in. And then the second play of the third quarter, Kevin Andrews goes for a touchdown. So just like that, Brick Memorial's up 14-10. And I asked Walt Curry after the game, what went into that decision? And it was like, look, we trust our kicker. We think Jack Murata is very good, but that wasn't going to do it for us. Like, we needed a touchdown. So they went for it, and it paid off.
And a clutch interception to seal the game.
Yes. A couple the game-sealing interception, yes, by sophomore Nazir Matthews, that was big because Middletown North was driving. They needed a touchdown to win it, but they were, inside, the 40-yard line of Brick Memorial. So a big pick, and Jimmy Pop had a, it becomes a footnote because it was early in the game. But
that's an all-name team nominee, by the way, Jimmy Pop.
For a football player, it's pretty good. But Middletown North went down in that first drive and scored. Brick Memorial goes 3 and out, and it's like, man, Middletown North can duplicate what they just did, where Brick Memorial couldn't stop them, they could be in trouble. And then Pop picks off Luke Sheehan on the second and third play in the drive, and that was big. So an impressive performance for Brick Memorial's defense. Again, with the offense, we knew they were going to score. Could their defense stop anybody when it mattered, when they really needed to? And I think they showed that. It was a big game. Trey Talmadge, their sophomore linebacker, 11 tackles in the backfield a couple times. They had some hits for loss, which really helped them. And on the other side, Middletown North, it's funny. If you read the latest Shore 16 rankings, just came out. They lost, but actually moved up 2 spots. That's kind of a product of just the rankings in general.
That
but
could happen.
And
they took them to the wire.
They did, and they were a few mistakes away from winning that game. So they were right there. Those are 2 teams that they played 4 or 5 times. It's going to be 3-2, 2-3, something like that.
Yeah, and another games that jumped out to me were the Freeholds, both of them.
Yes.
Freehold Township against a ranked Red Bank team. Township was coming off the loss, the 45-21 loss to Middletown North. Rolls up 500 yards offense on the Bucks, wins handily by 3 touchdowns. We can get to that first. And then, obviously, Freehold Borough had lost 9 games in a row. They went 0-8 last year. I don't think they scored more than 13 points in a game. Mm-hmm. They come out and get 35 right off the bat against a really solid Keyport team that features one of the Shore's best players. But we'll start with Township. I mean, what did you think about their bounce-back effort after that first week against a Red Bank team that, came into the season with some expectations in the latest year under Shane Fallon?
Yes, a very impressive win for Freehold Township. The 500 yards certainly stands out. That's a big number for any team.
Although for Corey Davies, in his career, it's all right.
He's seen plenty of those.
Exactly.
What impressed me more was the 210 yards rushing. Nick Cardone, their junior quarterback, had his breakout game. And he's been playing, quarterback parts of the last 2 seasons, so he is experienced. But when you can throw for 290 and run for almost 90 more, that's a huge effort. I don't care who you're playing. And that was big for them, because if they can be balanced like that with what we know that passing game can produce when they have the personnel to execute it, that's a legitimately dangerous team.
They're not an easy team to prepare for, because not a ton of teams run that air raid system in the Shore Conference really at all.
No.
And Corey Davies knows it inside and out. He basically pioneered it in the Shore Conference.
Yes.
So that's tough. But you're right, to add the running element to that, because we always think that's the offense where you throw the ball 40 or 50 times a game. So if you're adding that running element, and your quarterback is that much of a dual threat, that's a team. And I think Corey's teams always do a good job of bouncing back. They'll have a loss. They'll come right back the next week just when you think they're sliding a little bit. They'll surprise you and come back and get a win. So I think that was a big confidence booster for them. And then conversely, Freehold Borough, they had a really rough season last year. Yeah. Part of it was a product of their schedule. Mm-hmm. Every team they played except for one was a playoff team, and most of them, Rumson's in the Group 2 final. RBC is one of the number 2 team in the Shore. They're in a state final. But, they weren't even competitive in those games. They were losing every, game by – I think they lost every game by 26 points except for one. But talking to Dave Ellis, their head coach, last year they only had 5 seniors and only 2 of them really played. Yeah. This year, he said, out of his 13 seasons, the most seniors he ever has, 19. So all but out of the 22 positions on the field, I think all but 2 or 3 are seniors on this year's team.
That'll help. So
he challenged them in the offseason, and he gave some credit to their strength and conditioning coach, who you know well, Nick Tyson, the former Freehold Borough star quarterback, to challenge these kids to get in the weight room, get bigger, get stronger, get faster. And then they come right out and put up 35 points and have a pair of 100-yard rushers. That, I think, was a great thing, but we also have to talk. That was another game, like your Manalapan game, that had a little bit of a controversial element to it.
Yeah, there was a catch that was a catch, was not a catch, so it's...
And it led to the game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, by Freehold.
For Freehold with about 6 minutes left in the game.
The Keyport fan base certainly on the side of, hey, that wasn't a catch. The Freehold fan base.
They're bonding with the Manalapan fan base this week.
They are, and that's the nature of high school athletics. I think what hurts it is the replay at the other levels. So people are used to seeing that on TV, and the fact that high school, the NJSA had replay a couple years ago and then took it away.
It only lasted 3 years.
Yeah, and I know it became complicated. Not every team had the required, the equipment. So it's
and the person. The other thing is you need a neutral person taking the video and interpreting it, because if it's Keyport that has the video and is showing it, then Dave Ellis is going to be like, wait, this is the home team and we're watching their video, or if it's the other way around. Yeah. So you need that. So I think part of it, it's almost like having, how everybody that complains that there's no shot clock in New Jersey basketball. Yes. And they always say it's because we would need another official to maintain that. Someone would have to work it and all that. So it'll be a lot of logistics to work out to really get instant replay. And when the NJSA did it just for the state playoffs, they bungled it so bad in 2 games that there was utter outrage in 2021, and they just scrapped it. So I think it's still going to stay. I mean, maybe we'll get to the point where technology is so cheap, so easy to use, you can get multiple camera angles, and it's not hard in a couple years, that maybe you will reach that point, but we're not at that point now.
Right. So those are some of the top games from week 1. Everything else, you can head to shoresportsnetwork.com, go back through the CV Jeep scoreboard. All the details, recaps are in there, as well as our players of the week for the division, for the overall in the Shore Conference, offense, defense, and special teams. And if you disagree with any of those, you can go on and make your picks for the fan selection, offensive and defensive players of the week. That with the updated Shore 16 rankings and a whole bunch more. This is the football podcast, but there are, other sports are getting started soon. So we'll have all that covered on shoresportsnetwork.com. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back with our guest. What team are we talking about this week? Well, you'll find out after this on the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network.
Getting that perfect slice is satisfying, fulfilling, and rewarding too. But we don't do it for fun. We do it for fresh. Slice to order makes a sub above.
Welcome back to the Varsity Link Coaches Corner, talking Shore Conference football ahead of a busy week 2. And we got some guests today, which is great because that's what the Coaches Corner is all about. This team had not a breakout season last season, but one of the best in program history, and came into the season with some big-time expectations. They tied the program record for wins in a season and are one of the up-and-coming programs in the Shore. And we're excited to talk to their head coach, and that is John Tierney, the second-year man of the Pinelands Wildcats. So we'll welcome in John right now, and we'll talk some Pinelands football. So, John, first of all, thanks for taking some time to join us. What was the wet bulb looking like down there in Tuckerton? Because it's like 1,000 degrees in early September.
Number one, thanks for having me on. Great. So luckily we weren't at school yet. We could go before at 7 a.m.
Well, that's good because
we got it in.
No midnight practices.
No.
No, but let's talk about this season. I mean, traditionally Pinelands has been an underdog. I mean, like the facts are that we've only won one division title. That was in 1987. But you come into this season off a 7-win season in a division where on paper you guys look like the favorite. No one else in your division won more than 3 games last year. So I guess what's it like to come into the season now? Do you welcome these expectations, or how do you deal with increased expectations this season?
To me, we will always be the underdog. I think you take a look around at some other rankings, not going to mention names, and we're not even top 10 of Ocean County. So as far as we're 17. So
last season, you're first there as the head coach, but you've been coaching around the Shore for a long time. So I know you're excited to get your first job as a head coach. What were some of the things you immediately wanted to implement, in the sense where you're probably saying to yourself, hey, when I'm a head coach, like I want to do this or do this, and what were some of those things, and how were you able to implement those into a successful year 1? So
first and foremost, I put the weight room one. Mm-hmm. If kids weren't out sports, I wanted them to weight. So we had something as hard hat of the week award, and who worked the hardest in the weight room that week got the hard hat, and it was just great.
You guys are coming off a 41-13 win over Point Beach. Week 1, week 0, whatever it is when you open. Obviously, that there's such a big focus on that. You're preparing the whole offseason. You have this one team that you can focus on, for months at a time. So when you come out and execute at a high level and win that game, how important is that to set that early tone for the season?
It's very important because now the kids, you're telling them believe, and you go out and you get a win, very well coached. Now the kids believe in practice, and we started out with nothing, got a little shaky, 4-13.
Right, and you guys brought back a lot of offensive weapons this year. I mean, I know your quarterback did graduate, but, I mean, let's talk about some of those guys. I mean, you got Frawley, you got, multiple guys that can run the ball. I mean, tell us about some of the top offensive weapons you guys, employing this year.
I'm going to be a little biased here as an offensive line.
I knew the line talk was coming.
All right, and You got a kid like Tyler Gass coming back, Anthony Iguano, Jaden Hatzford, who's just a monster. Kid put in so much work in the offseason. He's 6'5", 280 pounds. Great kid. Cooper Simon, Kwasi Goody, Brady Fent, Chase Martin. Starts with those guys. And then from there, you got your Mike Frawley, go out and make one-handed catches, and Jamie Parkinson, who the kid he sleeps and loves to wait. Erica Donich, T. Newsom decided to come back out this year. Matt Davis, Liam Villinger. These guys are all giving them the ball. And we have a freshman who scored last week, Jenkins, who's another kid, a fun kid to watch.
That offense you run, a multiple kind of, pro style I formation. It seems like that is an offense that, can work at a lot of different schools just because you can do a lot of different things with it. I mean, is that the thought process of why that's an offense that you like for your program?
I've only ever played in the eye, per se. So everything was based at the eye. And then you get 7,000 different things off of it. Mm-hmm. I learned from Bardo, Ambrose, and Holmes at Town. And I coached Coach Corey, who is phenomenal. And we have stuff in there. But everything off the eye.
I mean, when you come into this season, some coaches, set concrete expectations of we should make the playoffs, we should win a division, or things like that. Do you put those kind of things on your team, or it's more of a week-to-week type of situation?
It's day to day. Our thing is shut the lights off and lock the doors. Tomorrow starts school, and the kid's job is to be on time. Sit in the front of the class, be a great student. So it's day to day.
And coming up this week, it's an interesting clash. It's like, one of the traditional strong schools of the Shore Conference trying to rebound from some tough seasons, Neptune, against you guys. I think it's a really interesting matchup, especially at their home. They're coming off a win over Lakewood. That's their first season opening win in 9 years, so they have some momentum, I guess. How do you see the challenge of facing those guys?
Number one, the quarterback was he's very good. Then you throw this in who had 3 touchdowns last week, didn't see the ball a lot in preseason, and he's a beast. Their coach, very late, doing a great job getting right in. It's going to be 8 minutes of just who wants it more.
Yeah, we're going to go back to last season. I mean, you come in, it's your first year as a head coach. I know you were there. You've been on staff. So, you had guys in mind of who you wanted to coach with. So just tell us about that, like bringing in a staff. I know a lot of guys were there, but just kind of building that in the mold of what you want. And tell us about some of those guys that are, helping the Wildcats.
Your AD, awesome. Mm-hmm. His whole staff, Coach Styles, our athletic trainer, Coach Wyatt, who's in the admin office with Thunderman. It's great to work with them. But my first call was to Frawley. Mm-hmm. He's so particular. He's going to work harder than anybody else. He's going to get the kids to play for him. He's going to wear those shorts.
I was going to say, he has a unique game day attire as well.
He is aware that it's not 1975, right?
I'll tell you what, his defense, I don't care what he wears.
I'll tell you what, he makes me and Bob feel 100 years old because obviously we worked with his legendary father, Joe Adelizi Sr. at the Asbury Park Press when we were coming up. So Joe was like a tiny little kid when we first started.
And it's funny, he's one of the people I would say who's as passionate as I am about sports. He knows kids. We talk all the time about the 80s and 90s. Sit around and talk to him.
It's true, and in multiple sports too, because I'll be at a wrestling match in the winter, and I got a tap on my shoulder, and it's Joe Ad, and we're sitting there talking wrestling, for 15 minutes before the match.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing that I think you have good insight into is there's a lot more women and girls getting involved in football now, and you coach the flag team. the girls team at Pinelands, and you have a girl, Holly Lucas, on your varsity team this year who I think might have made some Shore Conference history in that Point Beach game. I think every girl that's ever played in the Shore Conference has been a kicker.
Yes. And
she got into the game as a lineman, or linewoman, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess, like, do you feel like there's just a lot more enthusiasm and girls, like, focusing on football and wanting to be a part of things?
So her brother and brother played at Pine.
Okay.
Mom sort of put her in 7th grade, and I was coaching her in 7th grade, and she was great. She was awesome to be a great teammate. And when you guys do stuff in the beginning of the year, there was like any interesting stories. I just see like Holly the football player, not Holly the girl football player. I didn't put it down. And just because she's one of the people on the team. But she's a girl and she played, and it was pretty awesome.
Now you're talking that was at the middle school, 7th grade?
Yes.
When you were coaching the middle school team there? Does she play on the flag team with you as well?
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
She's back, and she's very, very good output and business, and she concentrates on that.
I mean, what's her reaction? She doesn't start, right? So you had to tell her to go into the game against Point Beach, right? Or was it one of your assistants? I guess, like, what was her reaction to getting some time on the field in that game?
She just ran out, ready to go, and I'll be honest, forgot, didn't post anything. Thursday became it was just Holly. Who goes to every workout, plays really hard, practice players. So
right, and I guess that's the hope ultimately,
Yeah.
right? That like these girls are in the game or playing, and it's not a big deal anymore. It's just part of football.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. It definitely is becoming, and like you said, there's most of them are kickers, but it seems like it is becoming the point where it's like, okay, if you want to play and like you can play, like
I know.
who
I'm
cares,
waiting for
whatever.
the first like flag crossover, like some girl who runs like a 4.4 40 on the flag team and can just fly, and that like might play receiver or something like that. Like that'll definitely be a fun development whenever it happens.
I'm sure Scott can get it done.
Good stuff. Well, John, great to talk to you. Exciting to see, Pinelands coming off a 7-win year. And like Scott said, he has some expectations. I know, like you said, you're taking it one game at a time. I would not expect a coach to tell me any different. They might take your coaching card away if you don't say that. So you know that, but I know there's excitement.
We have this week where Holly made, people are talking to her, but I'm not looking past it by any means.
Mm-hmm.
Next week.
Oh yeah, that big subplot. Is that the Central game?
And he's going to be moving out on Saturday.
Yes.
Later
for
on.
those who don't know,
Yes,
John's son plays for Central.
So that'll be interesting.
that's and you know what? We'll. I'm going to ask you one more quick one about that because I definitely remember the most prevalent one was over the last 4 years. I think it was 4 years ago. Middletown South head coach Steve Antonucci coaching against his son Tommy, who was Manasquan's quarterback. And that was a little more different because the game plan all week was like, kill Tommy.
Right, exactly. You're
like,
sitting at the dinner table staring at the kid thinking, how many sacks are we going to get on my son on Saturday?
So probably not the same, right? As Liam plays wide receiver and
Plays
defensive
wide
back. So it's not, it's not to get that kid on every play, but you do have some insight into his route running abilities, I guess, huh?
You're gonna be hunched over your playbooks and over your other stuff. Like, stop looking. Like, don't come in the room.
Oh, my computer's not.
There's like 12 password encrypted, NSA level security on that computer.
John has reached out to all the Swiss banks to see what their encryption methods are for the playbook. That's great. Well, good luck to you this weekend. I know you guys are excited about what the season holds, and I know it just started, but I'm sure it's going to go quick, and we'll probably look back in a month saying what the heck happened. But some big games on the horizon for the Wildcats. Thank you for your time, John, and I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys very much for having us.
All right, that's Pinelands head coach John Tierney talking some Wildcats football, and we're going to talk to some of his players in just a few minutes. But just first of all, on Pinelands, last year 7 wins. And that's a huge season for them, especially in his debut when that program does not have a long history of success. They've only won 7 games in a season twice.
And not only that,
way
of
back.
duplicating success. Like they'll a lot of times they would kind of, have a sophomore class that they follow up through senior year and sort of peak at senior year, but then all those kids would graduate and then they're going back to 2 wins and sort of starting all over again. So if he can keep it really going here and get another winning season and, and that, again, that develops enthusiasm. Then the numbers grow. Then you get more, maybe more talent comes and wants to play for you. So, yeah, I think this is a big season. And I think, we've talked a lot about the division realignments, right? And how they can really help certain teams because you're not facing like some schedule of doom. You can actually make some headway, make some progress. And I think Pinelands has really taken advantage of that. They've taken a step up in competition a little bit more this year, bigger schools, like a Neptune, even though they've struggled, it's still Neptune. Yeah. And it's interesting. Central, for all I know, that if Pinelands can get past Neptune, Central versus Pinelands might be for that division.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think, they've done it. He's done a really good job, and I think he's just so great at generating enthusiasm. And we talked about Tommy Farrell from Manchester last week, like when a similar program with a similar history. Yeah. When they got in there, it was like we just want to change the whole vibe around the program. Yeah. That's a big thing you've seen high school kids. When you get them to believe in something, you can do way more than maybe even they thought they could.
It's critical. It's also very hard to do. So when you can pull it off or begin to put the program on that path, it's a huge step. So, and they took step 1. Now they're going to try.
I think it's a really big one this weekend. Yeah. This is one of those ones. If you get this, more people will really start to believe, like, wow, they've turned a corner. Like they are really becoming like a division title threat and like a possible playoff. They've only had a couple playoff berths in their entire history. So making the postseason would be huge for them. And I think this game coming up is going to be a crucial part of that.
Yeah, like we said, week 2 and already some huge games coming up. We will talk about that and more with a handful of Pinelands players coming up in just a minute. So quick break, and then we'll be back talking more Wildcats football. You're watching the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network. Back on the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network. You can watch this show every week on shoresportsnetwork.com. You can also catch it in podcast form wherever you get your podcast from, Stitcher, Apple Music, Spotify, you name it. Head there, and you can listen to us in the car, at home, wherever you want. So talking short conference football, we just got off with Pinelands head coach John Tierney. And now we're going to welcome in a quartet of the Wildcats players coming off a 41-13 victory over Point Beach in week 1 in their season opener, and now a big one against Neptune coming up this week in division play. So we'll welcome in right now from Pinelands, Liam Villinger, senior. We also have Devante Bonds, Mike Frawley, and Holly Lucas joining us. You see them pop up on the screen. We'll get talking to those guys. And first of all, right now we have Devante and Mike joining us. So guys, first of all, thanks for taking some time on a Wednesday to join us. And, a nice way to start the season. Certainly, 41-13 over Point Beach. How big is it, with all the buildup you guys have during the offseason to come out in that first game, all that hype, all the adrenaline, and go out there and pick up a win?
I mean, it feels good. We knew we were going to go out there. Last year, it was 19-0 after the first half, and they kind of came back on us. Mm-hmm. We really didn't know how it was going to go.
And Devante, you guys came in this season with big expectations. Traditionally, Pineland's been kind of like an underdog most years. What was it like coming in off a 7-win season and, having people think you should contend for a division title, that the target's a little bit more on your guys' back this year?
Like Coach said earlier, I really still we're the underdogs because, we got to do our thing and just keep winning and doing if we do our job, I think we're going to have a banner by the end of this year.
Some internet issues here with you guys. So we'll get another question in here for you. But, Mike, I'll ask you, again, it's a program that hasn't had like a ton of sustained success. So last season, Coach Tierney's first year, come out, you win 7 games. You really play well, competitive in every game, even the losses. Just tell us about what that did for the excitement and the expectations now coming into this year where, you're excited about what you did, but I'm sure you guys want more and feel like you can achieve that.
I mean, yeah, we do want a lot more with our success. Growing up, I've always wanted better for the program in a way. And coming up and then having Coach Tierney come for us, he was my coach back in 7-8. We did decent back then. We look at ourselves as a foundation. And we just want to set the foundation for everyone else. We were really the only class that really stayed together, and it's showing because we're having success at the end of the day. And we're just looking to get a number on that banner in the gym. That's our only goal. That's all that matters.
I got to ask you, Mike, tell me about the nice one-handed catch. We were able to see a highlight of that against Beach. Just tell me about that play. It's got to feel good making a touchdown catch like that.
I gave him the inside release. I was getting doubled at that point. And, I got my head around, and I just saw the ball, and I only got one hand up, stuck. It was a new pair of gloves.
Those gloves now are amazing. It's like joke, like, man, I wish I had those when I played, but no, really, those are insane. We have the old Newmans that didn't catch anything.
Now you got the Justin Jefferson. You can go behind the head and grab one.
One more thing for you, Mike. Just after the kind of season you had as a receiver last year, you're second in yards and catches. Are you expecting to just be double teamed more?
I look at it as if I'm helping the team as best as possible. I'm taking a player out of the box. I have two people on me. They're essentially playing a 10-man defense. So that leaves room for Jamin to run crazy. And that's all that matters to me is winning. If I have to get taken out of the game and for my other guys to shine, that doesn't matter to me. I just want to win.
Tierney's going to like hearing that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Devante, real quick for you. I think I had like 17 tackles in the Beach game, so you started off on fire too. Just tell me about the defense and the kind of tone you guys are trying to set and how you're trying to play each week.
Coach Ads puts together a great defensive plan this week, and we just follow through, and it just happened to get me 17 tackles this last game. I tend to do it every week.
That'd be a lot. Are you gonna like try to challenge Liam for the team leading tackles? I guess we can ask Liam about that in a second, but Liam, I think, was like third in the shore in tackles last year. So is there like friendly competition within the team about like stuff like that? Like I know it's tackles and like it's not the be all end all, but I imagine there's some conversation about that stuff.
Me and Liam like grew up like best friends between us two. So like the competition between us is gonna be like friendly, and we're gonna fight for that seat is what we're going for.
Good stuff. Just tell me about Neptune coming up. Excited to play a traditional shore power, and they're 1-0, as well, coming off a win last week. Just what are your thoughts, both of you guys, going into that game?
I mean, it's a good football team. We've been watching film on them all week. We also believe that we're really good. So we have a lot of weapons coming back. Our offensive line, I feel like we've lost a couple seniors, but we're really strong up front, and we're going to be able to run the ball all day long, and the passing game's there too. So we really have all the weapons to just count on the defense what happens up front.
I think defensively, Coach, like I said earlier, put together a really good plan for that. And it's just all about discipline. If we could stay disciplined and not let them like get under us or skin and stuff like that, I think we got them.
Sounds good. Well, guys, we're going to let you bounce and talk to a couple of your other teammates. Thanks a lot for giving us some time tonight, and best of luck this season. Excited to see what the Wildcats can do for an encore.
I will be there. I'll be in the house of the Scarlet Flyers. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys in person.
All right, that's Mike Frawley and Devante Bonds from Pinelands. So two of those guys, two of their top players who had huge, week one performances. So we'll let those guys go, and now we're going to bring in another outstanding senior, Liam Villinger, who has been a tackling machine the last couple of years. I remember his sophomore year, looking at the stats going, whoa, it was this guy with 1 million tackles, and then we told now he's really like a safety, like linebacker hybrid. And then the same thing last year, third in the shore in tackles, Liam Villinger. So Liam, again, welcome to the show. Thanks for taking some time out on a Wednesday night to join us. And just first of all, congratulations on that week one win. How nice is it to just go out there after the entire offseason, the weight program, like everything that goes into preparing for that game and executing at a high level.
Yeah, it feels good to get that first win, set the tone. All we really want to do is win this season, so that's about it.
And how has the, I guess, enthusiasm changed about your team? I mean, do you feel like school's not really started yet, but that like there's more talk about the team at school and just more attention, and that you guys are just generating a lot more enthusiasm about football at Pinelands?
I think there's a fair share of some people who doubt us and like try to like hate on us for winning, like doing good. But then there are some others that like put us on high levels and try to keep us going. So, I mean, yeah, there's a few people that do a lot for us and support us.
And how have you dealt with the expectations? Like we asked the other guys, this is the first year in a while that Pinelands has had some pretty lofty preseason expectations, that teams look at what you did last year, and it's not like the old Pinelands where it's just, we circled that as a win. It's like, if we want to win this division, we got to go through Pinelands. That's a team we're going to have to beat. How do you deal with those bigger expectations this year?
Me personally, it doesn't affect me. I just try to go out and do my best, do what I do, but I think it puts like a little heat on us. But I don't think any of us will take it too much where we can't hold at our level to play.
And like Scott said, it's new and different expectations, but it just seems from talking to everyone in the program, from Coach Tierney on down through all the players, that like that's what you guys want. Like there's no reason to shy away from it. Like that's what you play for. Like you want to be good and be in the conversation. So is there a part of you that says, we not only do we embrace the expectation, but we want to take advantage of this opportunity because you do have a good team that can accomplish things?
Yeah, at the same point too, especially from past years, haven't been really good, so you really don't have that to lose. So you got to just go all out.
Do you take it too as a sense that you guys could, if you wanted to, rewrite the Pinelands record book? I mean, you have a chance. Maybe you can look back and say this was the best Pinelands team ever, or the team that accomplished more than any Pinelands team ever. Like, yes, you have that tough history, but on the other hand, it means that you can accomplish things that have never been done at the school.
Yeah, I think it would be really cool to end off my senior year getting one up on the banner.
And as a senior too, I mean, you've been. I can't remember off the top of my head if you played and started as a freshman, but I know you've been playing since you were a sophomore, and now it's senior year, and there's just a different vibe when you step on the field, and it's the last first game of the season and all that stuff. So, what does that do as far as the urgency of going out there and knowing that this is your last shot as a high school player?
Thinking that as a senior, especially before games, you just want to go out and have fun, enjoy every second of it. And it just, for me, it makes me play harder. But also at the same time, it's kind of like a sad feeling almost, like time's ending, it's coming up. But
you have the big game coming up against Neptune this weekend, Friday night. Traditional, long-time Shore Conference power. They've had some struggles in recent years, different coaches, but it's still Neptune. How do you look forward to the challenge of having to go to their field and come away with a win in what looks like, a really big divisional game?
I think it's going to be a good game, pretty fair match. It's just, I know it's a long ride all the way up there, but I like our matchups. I like what our team's going to do, and I have a lot of hope in it.
I feel like most of the rides are long for you guys, especially with the new divisions. It's not P South anymore, so I feel like you guys are you getting a little used to those? Like, hey, we got an hour in the bus.
You guys could watch like all of Friday Night Lights or something like on your trip.
Oh yeah,
that's true. The away games for Pinelands, you can knock out a whole series or like a whole trilogy of movies.
Right. You could have Remember the Titans. You could have a whole like movie fest the whole way. But I guess the other thing is we're about to talk to her in a minute, but I'm just curious, Holly Lucas playing on your team, Coach Tierney, like he said, she just wants to be treated like any other player. But, in a way, like Bob and I were saying, she's like a pioneer to some degree in the Shore Conference that almost all the other girls that have played have been kickers. Mm-hmm. So Holly playing on the line is way different. I mean, I guess, what is it like having her on the team, and her being part of this program?
It's different, but it's definitely a cool feeling. Like seeing her go out and every day just practicing how hard she can. It's really cool to see that. And I don't really get much time to practice to see her practice, but it's just really cool to see her doing what she's doing.
Liam, last one for me. We were talking to Devante before about his 17 tackles in week 1. Is that true? You guys have been friends for a long time, and I imagine if there's got to be some kind of friendly competition because you're one of the Shore's top tacklers last season.
Yeah, there's sometimes a little beef, but it's never serious. But we just push each other to get more and more. And like you said, he had an outstanding game, 17 tackles. All I did was pick him up, congratulate him for that.
I'm not going to be surprised if we see him with 17 one of these weeks. So, Liam, thanks again for joining us. Some great insight on your season and your matchup coming up this Friday against Neptune. Again, thanks for giving us some time tonight, and best of luck to you and your teammates the rest of the way.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Liam. That's Pinelands senior Liam Villinger. Just one of those guys just piles up tackles, whether it's a linebacker, strong safety. Like, he is coming downhill and hitting guys, and they'll take a guy on the defense like that.
100%. Yeah. Joe Adalisi's got himself some ballers on that defense.
He does.
Those guys, they played great, and now they're going to get a good test. Like they said, John said that they got some explosive guys on offense. So, yeah, if you're running those guys down in the open field and making tackles, I think that only adds more to the legitimacy.
And our final guest, you heard us, we've mentioned her quite a few times already, and that's Holly Lucas from the Pineland Wildcats. So excited for Holly to join us. We mentioned female players on the football teams are becoming more prevalent. It's not the unicorn that it used to be, which is great. And now with the Shore Conference Flag Football League, you're certainly seeing so much more interest in the game. That's trickled down to the youth levels too, which is unbelievable. Holly's not a flag player. She's just a straight-up football player, just like her father and her brother, and now she's a part of the Wildcats football team. So excited to bring in Holly Lucas right now and talk to her. So, Holly, I got to say, your history of Pinelands football, your father played, your brother played. Was that something always that you just said in your mind, like, I'm going to play, like, I'm interested in playing football and I'm going to do it as well?
No. I started playing 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
My brother graduated 5th grade. After he graduated, something that was out.
Okay.
So I decided to play.
Have you, gotten your bragging rights in? I mean, you guys got 7 wins last year. Did your dad or your brother ever have a team that won that many games at Pinelands?
Really bragging rights. I was part of 7.
Oh, okay.
And this is actually same time, like amount of time that him.
Mm-hmm.
He played from his freshman year to his senior year, and I played from 7th grade.
Okay.
And 4 years each.
And like the other girls that we've covered during our time during the Shore have almost all exclusively been kickers. You play on the line, much more physical position, all of that. I guess, what is that like for you, in that you're playing one of the most physical positions on the field, much different than maybe the average girl that's on a football team?
Well, I've always been like a lineman. And the same position my brother played, I know well. And honestly, I've never tried to be good. And I don't think I ever will be.
Right. And that's the thing. I feel like you're kind of pushing the boundaries now for other girls to say, you don't always just have to play kicker. Like there's a lot of other positions you could potentially play on the field, and you're showing it. What was it like in the Point Beach game when you get in the game? I think that was pretty much a historic moment in Shore Conference history when you got into that game. I mean, does Coach Tierney tell you? Does your position coach tell you? How do you find out you're going in the game, and what was that moment like?
Tierney told me. I was on the sideline. Tierney told me I was going that note. I said, okay. And a bunch of my teammates rushed over, and field and played what I could.
And now, what was the reaction of the Point Beach player who was lined up against you? Like, was there any kind of like double take from him, or it was pretty normal?
I honestly don't think that's true.
What was
Usually,
it like?
I have
Sorry.
text in my bed, so
So you probably didn't even know.
probably not.
That's good though. That's kind of what you want though, isn't it? That you just want to be out there playing and not necessarily have that huge spotlight on you of, oh my God, that's a girl in there.
Yep.
Moving on to what the on the field stuff as far as the X's and O's. I mean, we asked your teammates, the whole off season is a build up to that first game, and you're told you can never look ahead. The off season is the one time you can because you know who your next opponent is. So just what was it like to go out there as a team and just execute really well and come away with a convincing victory?
We've been working hard during the off season, and between 7-on-7 and I believe that we were like good, and we showed that last week.
And now, how do you look forward to the challenge of Neptune? I mean, this is a big divisional game, traditional power. You got the long bus ride all the way up there to exit 100.
Yeah.
How do you look forward to the challenge of playing Neptune this Friday?
Well, the bus ride gives us film, gets fresh, and I believe in my team 100%. Between coaches, between the O-line, field, and defense, we're a strong team.
Yeah, I mean, Pinelands has had individual years of success, like your dad's team that did win the division title, but it's been hard for them to string multiple years in a row of winning seasons. What would that mean to you guys to, duplicate that, turn in another winning season this year and kind of build a foundation of it's more than just one good year?
I honestly think these past few years I haven't had a coach that's been like Tierney. Tierney isn't just on the field, he's also making everything off field. He also supports our team 100%.
That's great stuff. Well, Holly, thank you for taking some time to talk to us tonight, spending a lot of time, in the waiting room there, waiting for Coach Tierney and your teammates. And just awesome to see you out there just playing the sport you love. And like Scott said, it's awesome to see it's just becoming more normalized where, yes, it's a story, but you're just out there playing a sport you enjoy. And I think that's awesome. So, again, congratulations individually. Congratulations on the team success. And, we look forward to talking to you more in the future.
Definitely.
All right, that's Pinelands Holly Lucas, concluding our Wildcat portion of the show. Always great to have the one team on to featuring, kind of just dive in, a little more on just what their expectations are, the season, all that stuff. So it was good. And with Pinelands, they are one of the more intriguing teams in the shore, at least to me, based off all those things we talked about.
Yeah, I think it's always exciting when a team that traditionally hasn't had success kind of turns the corner. I mean, how much did we love that Marlboro story last year of them having their best season since the 90s? Obviously we love watching the great players, the Micah Fords, the Owen O'Tooles, and all the top teams. But, those teams have success every single year. It's normal for them. If you're Middletown South, the state final is on your calendar that you're handing out to the team before the season.
It's true.
So, to see a team like Pinelands that has struggled for such a long time to be able to do that and have subplots, like a Holly Lucas, she's so young and when you're a teenager, it's not sinking in, but in 20 years, you may look back and go, that was a landmark thing that she, like we said, she's not a kicker. She's just a regular player on the line, no less, and completely holding her own. And like she said, who knows if the guy playing across from her even knew she was a girl because she tucks her hair under the pads.
And in the heat of the game, you're just all right, next play.
Yeah, and it shows that she's good enough that you wouldn't even know the difference.
Yes.
So I think that's exciting. And how many years where they might struggle to only have a handful of all division guys, but now they got guys who are going to challenge for high level, first team level,
they had 2 second team all shore players last year. Mike Frawley was one of them. So yes, they got the dudes, as the saying goes. So they're very intriguing. And just going back to what we're talking about, where they're not a team with all this tradition and lore, but that's what high school football is about. That 1 year or that team finally putting it together and looking back on that, bringing communities together. Like, that's what this is all about.
Yeah, those runs are so memorable. Like, I mean, we're old enough to remember Monmouth Regional the one year they had with Tom D'Ambrisi in like the mid-2000s. That was a great ride for them because
those
that
always
was another
stick out
program.
to me.
Yeah, you always remember them because, you know, that team is so euphoric and it's so fun for their fans after so many, you know, and you're just happy for parents and everyone surrounding these games that maybe has watched a lot of losses over the years to now finally feel like, oh, wow, now, you know, we're the ones taking it to the other team and like we're the ones getting written up and getting interviewed. So I think that's always fun when teams kind of trying to turn the corner, but you got to do it. Like, you know, you got to actually execute on the field. Certainly the expectations are there. And, you know, the next part is you got to go out and get those wins.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and then we're going to come back and just look ahead to week 2 and touch on some of the top games. So we'll do that in just a couple minutes. You are watching and listening to the Varsity Link Coaches Corner on the Shore Sports Network.
Getting that perfect slice is satisfying, fulfilling, and rewarding too. But we don't do it for fun. We do it for fresh. Slice to order makes a sub above.
Back for the final 10 minutes or so of the Varsity Link Coaches Corner. I guess we'll call this the week 1 edition. It's the second episode, but we're going into week.
I'm
always like, how do I say it? Is it the prior week or the week we're going into? In any event, week 1's in the books. We're looking ahead to week 2. And this is divisional play starts like in earnest this week. Like there are some massive division games right away. And, you know, when talking about how much parity there is in these divisions, I think that's what you get. Like every week, these division games, they're pretty big, at least while we're still trying to figure out who are the contenders.
Yeah, every week that you send me the picks, it's like I'm staring at all of them half the time like, hey, this is hard, you know? Like these teams might be separated by a touchdown or a field goal or it's an overtime game. But yeah, this is the separation time, you know, where we start finding out, okay, this team's probably not going to compete for the division title. This team is, although some of these divisions are so much parity that a team will get a leg up now and then get knocked back again and another team will tie them. So, you know, to me, I really look at it like at the top, the American Division gauntlet is ready to begin. I mean, we got to start with number 1, Toms River North, number 3, Rumson Fairhaven. You're going to be at that game at Borden Stadium, right, in Rumson, Friday night. That place is going to be rocking. I mean, you're talking the team that was in the Group 2 finals last year against the defending Group 5 14-0 champions who've won now 16 in a row. Two of the arguably number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks in the Shore, Micah Ford and Owen O'Toole. Tons of other stars in this game. Jalen Matthews just took a visit out to Penn State. Where
of top
it's
players.
like half the All-Shore team come to life, essentially. But what are you looking for in that game? I mean, personally, I think it's just going to be an interesting test. O'Toole throwing the ball against arguably one of the best secondaries in the state.
Yeah. And these two teams have produced some really entertaining games. When Toms North is in the American Division a couple years ago when they had Jake Kazanowski as their quarterback, they pulled off a last-second win, at Rumson. And then last season, the teams played at Rutgers early, and it was Toms North win. I believe it was 40-28, 40-27, somewhere right around there. You know, Rumson gave them a game for most of that way.
Yeah, that was probably the most points North gave up all year.
It was all year. So, again, it's two of the best teams in the Shore, North number 1, Rumson number 3, two teams with some history, both of their own and against each other. Both programs have 7 NJSA sectional titles.
Two of the best public school programs in New Jersey.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of that wrapped up in it. It boils down to, can Rumson slow down Toms North's offense?
And slow down their run game.
Yes.
They just come right downhill at you with Ford. You miss a tackle here or there, he's gone. Yeah. And Josh Moore is the 1,000-yard rusher behind him. So, and they have other guys that can hurt you offensively too. So the thing is, Toms River North is not really subtle.
They're
a lot of times they line up, they have a huge line, and they just come off the ball and come at you. I mean, Rumson has allowed, 6 points in each of their first 2 games against Matawan and Middletown South. So their defense has been playing really well, but they have not faced anyone close to the caliber of the offense they're about to see. because
very dynamic.
Yes. And that's the thing. And Ford can throw the ball. I mean, everyone knows he's a tremendous runner, but he will absolutely hurt you in the pass game. And Pruitt and Counsell and all those guys.
They have
that can make
4
plays all over
legitimate
the field.
receivers, too, which is another – like, if you look at their offense, you have Ford, it's obvious.
Right.
You have Josh Moore, who is not so obvious to a lot of people, but is one of the best first-team All-Star running back last year.
Absolutely.
Then you're talking about Pruitt. They can move around and do so many things with him. Tariq Counsell. Nazir Jackson is a speedster. Cam Thomas is a very reliable guy who had a big touchdown in the state final last year. Plus, the line is like gigantic, anchored by one of the top recruits in all the states. So it's like, what's the weakness? There isn't one. Like penalties and turnovers.
I mean, I'm sure they studied the Millville film because Millville held Toms River North to 14 points, even though North put up a ton of yards. But last year, North kind of started a little slow in that week 0 game too, and then started to gain steam and was getting better every single week. I mean, the difference is last year, North had breathers built into their schedule. Like, in other words, like, they were so much better than everyone in that Colonial division that it was like, all right, if we need to get guys healthy or we need to kind of, if we're, experimenting with a few things or having some glitches with the offense is not a big deal. We're fine. But you can't do that against this level of team. The other interesting thing, though, is like, you would think a way to beat Toms River North is control the ball on your end, right? Make Michael Ford either be playing safety or standing there on the sideline most of the game. But Rumson attacks. Like, they throw the ball. They come right at you. They might score on you in a minute and a half. They're not sometimes taking a ton of time off the clock. So it'll be interesting if they try to alter that. I mean, their running game is more complementary of their passing game this year. Owen O'Toole led the Shore in passing yards last year. He's picked right up where he left off. Although Matawan seemed like they did a decent job against him last week. But, again, Rumson's really well coached. They don't make a ton of mistakes. They have multiple guys who can hurt you. But you're right. I think it really comes down to Toms River North's offense. Really, nobody in the Shore has been able to slow them down.
And it's really, with North's offense, you have to play a bend but don't break. You're going to give up yards. If you don't, it's an incredible.
It's like an NFL game. Millville, if you hold them to a field goal, that's a win.
Look, even Millville gave up. Ford ran for almost 200 yards, and Moore had a big game. Like, the stats were there. They just didn't finish a lot of those drives and stalled out. So if North finishes those drives
and doesn't turn the ball over, they're really, really hard.
Really hard to beat. So it should be an awesome one. I'm excited to go there. It's going to be packed. I'm going to be parking 5 miles down past the elementary school.
On the other side of Vowels over there. Yeah.
Be walking over the Oceanic Bridge to get there.
Yeah, seriously.
That's going to be an awesome one. And one of the bigger games, not just in the Shore, but around the state.
And it starts a big run for Toms River North because then they play Donovan Catholic in another huge American Division game the next week. So this is a real crucial stretch of their season, and as they want to cement that number 1 ranking. They want to go into that last regular season game against RBC feeling like we ran through this and we got one last big test before making another run. But it's going to be hard, man. Every week is another top 5 team.
Some quick hitters on some of these other top games. Long Branch at Manalapan. I kept both those teams in their spots, coming off losses, caliber of opponent, and Manalapan with the close loss. So it's number 8 Long Branch at number 9 Manalapan. Really the question is, what is the availability of Ernest Reevy at quarterback for Long Branch? And it doesn't seem like he's going to be there because he had a giant cast.
He had a cast on his hand. And you break your hand, it's rare that it's just like a week and you're getting that thing off. So Allander Daniels came in, the junior, he, did what was asked. I think the other thing is their running game really couldn't do anything against that Donovan Catholic front. Yeah. So they need to get Zaheem Brown and them going to take a little heat off Daniels to try to generate some offense against Manalapan. It's both teams, Long Branch is coming off a really tough loss to Donovan Catholic. Manalapan's coming off an absolute heartbreaker against Jackson Memorial. But this is huge for this division. This is, like I said, an early separation game. It does stink that, Reevy most likely is not going to be able to play quarterback because they are a different team without him back there.
I mean, he ran for over 200 yards against Piscataway.
Yeah, so I think that really swings things in Manalapan's there. But I'll tell you what, things got away from them in the second half of that game against Donovan Catholic, but they battled. Like, it was 13-7 at halftime. They were, scratching and clawing to stay right in it. Playing pretty good
doesn't
defense.
Back down. So
I think the defense just got tired because the offense was struggling, wasn't able to get a ton of first downs. But that's a crucial game for them in that division. And I also think, looking at the Freedom Division. We're
Yeah.
looking at Middletown, North Howell, and Marlboro Southern.
That's it. We have 2 games between ranked teams. And now that we're ranking 16 teams, it does add a level of intrigue in terms of like, okay, like these are some critical games. So, that's number 12 Middletown North at number 16 Howell, and then number 10 Marlboro at number 14 Southern. The Rams, the new team in the Shore Sports Network, Shore 16. Southern 2-0, Marlboro 1-0. Howell coming off the loss, but a 1-point loss to Wall.
Right.
So no reason to drop them and drop them, from the rankings. And we mentioned Middletown North. So again, you're talking about separation games and finding out, who is what in division. That's a big one.
It feels like a razor thin margin
Yeah.
in both of those games.
It really
like
does.
a fourth quarter, somebody has the ball with 5 minutes left, and that's going to decide the game one way or another.
And then, Barney at Brick Memorial, Mustangs trying to go to 3-0.
Yeah, I looked it up. Memorial has not even been 2-0 in
2012, I believe it was.
11 years.
Yeah. So it's been a bit. So a really good start for them. Freehold Township Madawan's an interesting game because Madawan's 0-2.
It got way interesting in the last couple of weeks.
It did because Madawan 0-2, but they lost to a Cedar Creek team that's one of the top teams in South Jersey. And then Rumson last week, which is like, no offense to Madawan, but you're looking at the schedule, you're penciling that in as a defeat. So they're 0-2, and now they play a Freehold Township team that's riding high after putting up, 500 of offense on RBR. Yeah. So that's a big one. If you're Madawan, like you can't really fall.
You got to get your
0-3.
offense untracked. You got shut out in the first game. You managed 6 points in the second game.
Yeah.
Like you got to get that offense
Yeah.
in gear. I think that's imperative for them, especially like you said, playing a team that just put up 500 yards and scored, 28 points. It wasn't like they put up a blizzard of points, but they can score.
Yeah.
They are going to get on the board. So that to me will let you know, like, man, that'll let you know, okay, well, they're 0-2 because they just played 2 really hard teams, or are they really just going to struggle this year?
Yeah.
And like the expectations maybe were a little high for them.
Very true. And especially it's the division opener. So if you're Madawan, it's like, okay, whatever. We came back, we won our division game, and like we kind of reset the season. Forget about those other 2. Let's just worry about going forward. And if they win and they do that, like we could be talking about them in 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, I mean that Independence Division title is still sitting out there. You're like, the 2 losses in the other games didn't do anything to put a wrench in that. So yeah, you still can come back. But yeah, that game to me in the last week just got real interesting.
It did. You mentioned Pinelands, Neptune, a big one. You'll be over there, taking all the Chick-fil-A sandwiches.
Yeah, that might be at least 50% of the reason that I'm going to just get online for Chick-fil-A repeatedly.
Manchester is 2-0, trying to move to 3-0. They host Point Beach. And then on Saturday, an interesting one. You have a 2-0 Brick team that has played tremendous defense, has allowed 7 points in 2 weeks, but hasn't scored a ton. And they're going to travel to Freehold team that we mentioned scored 35, gave up 28. So that's an interesting contrast of strengths right there, which will prevail. And that's another division game too. So you're talking about a separating, potential separating moment.
And and Freehold probably overlooked in that division, right? I mean, they went winless last year, but now they come out and do that against a real solid Keyport team. Like you said, Brick's defense has been shut down so far. They've only allowed 7 points the whole season, but the offense has struggled.
19 points, then 12 against Jackson Liberty.
Yeah.
So
and they're playing a team that has some offensive firepower that just had 200-yard rushers and a good dual threat quarterback. So that's Freehold's chance to show we're back to being the old Freehold, the division title contender, the regular state playoff team that they've been for so many years under Dave Ellis.
Offensive juggernaut. That
a team that will light you up if you're not careful. Dave Ellis said too they have more depth at receiver than they've had in years, that they're too deep at all their receiving positions, which for them has been rare. Yeah. So they got guys who can make it happen offensively. So it'll be, Brick's defense versus that offense. So that's you're right. That's an underrated matchup this week.
Some interesting ones in week 2, and it's going to be the same way, from now until we wrap things up in late November. So excited to cover it, excited to get out there this weekend and, stand on the sideline and see what we can learn because, this season, while we're going to get through next week and be like, okay, we learned this, we're so
Plus we
so
get to
far
enjoy
away
those
from,
crise fall 94-degree temperatures.
Like I said, it's bad when teams are having to move their practices to the evening because, the wet bulb is it's 90 above, which is like the black territory, which means like,
Right.
there's no practicing or barely anything.
It's kind of the new normal these days.
We should remember this conversation. We're like frozen in like
November. We'll be wishing for this when our fingers are gnarled around like the ice encrusted pen as it's like raining out in November at some game.
We've been there.
Yes.
We've been there. That's our other podcast that we do, which we'll be back this coming Monday with that, where we kind of really dive deep into each game in a little more detail from the prior week and the week coming ahead. So I'm sure at some moment there we'll have to have a rehashing all our like terrible weather games and stuff. We got a lot we can break down over the course of this season. So we'll get to that eventually. Want to thank our guest from Pinelands, head coach John Tierney, and their players, seniors Devante Bonds, Liam Villinger, Mike Frawley, sophomore Holly Lucas. Thank you to all of you for coming on and talking some football with us and telling us more about the Pinelands Wildcat football program. We'll be back next week. Scott and I doing the same thing. Guests to be determined. We'll see what happens this week. As always, until then, head to shoresportsnetwork.com, download the Shore Sports Network app, where you can find coverage of Shore Conference football from A to Z. So for Scott Stump, I'm Bob Badders. Thanks for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on the Varsity Link Coaches Corner.